Welcome to the Seaward Pat Refresher webinar series. This is session number 8, Documentation and Record Keeping. My name's Kevin Smith, I'm Category Manager here at Seaward and I'm going to be taking you through this webinar series. If you want to connect with me in relation to the content of this webinar or just Pat testing in general, I'm active on Facebook and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. So the agenda for today's webinar, obviously this is the final session, this is session number 8 in our Pat Refresher series. So it's been really great to go through over 8 weeks and actually take you all the way through from start to finish through the whole subject of Pat testing. So this is session 8 and in this session we're going to look at documentation and record keeping. Obviously a very important part. We've learned how to do it, we've learned what we're doing, why we're doing it. Now it's how do we actually document that and how do we keep the records, which is really important. So we're going to start off by having a look at the need for record keeping. We're going to have a close look at the IET model forms, old ways versus new ways of record keeping, record keeping systems, pros and cons, barcodes, and data on the move. So really a good overview of the whole subject of record keeping. And then at the end, obviously, if there's anything we haven't covered about this or anything else Pat related, obviously it's time for your Q&A. So we did a live Q&A session. So during the session, if you've got any questions, please type them into the chat box and I'll try and answer those as I go through. Any that are a bit bigger issues and need talking through or maybe are asked by a few people, I'll save those and we'll answer those on the live Q&A at the end. So with that said, let's get started. So let's have a chat about the need to keep records in the first place. So what I've done, I've looked at HSE guidance note, document HSR 25. And this is the Health and Safety Executive's guidance on the electricity at work regulations. So this is really what they say about record keeping straight from their document. This document is actually a free download. So if you go on the HSE website, search for HSR 25 or the electricity at work regulations, and it's a free download from there. So it's definitely worth a read, and it's something I've been referring to throughout this series. So the first thing that they explain is that records can aid demonstration of compliance and allow useful analysis of equipment condition, although keeping records is not a legal requirement. So they're very clear about that. There's no legal requirement under the electricity at work regulations to keep records of maintenance of Pat testing. The problem is that if you don't have it, as it says there can be a useful aid in the demonstration of compliance. So if you haven't got records, how do you actually prove that you did it? So if something goes wrong and they come to you and say, what did you do to maintain this equipment in a safe condition? You can say to them, well, legally, I don't have to keep any records. And you're right. But they'll then say, well, yeah, but show us the evidence that you've been doing it. And without the evidence, it's very hard for you to actually put that case to say that you have actually been meeting your legal requirements. So it is very important that you look at records of Pat testing and of equipment maintenance as the evidence that you've been doing the job, the actual there that you can say, look, I've been meeting my legal requirements and here is the evidence. So always bear that in mind as we go through the records today, the evidentiary value of those records. Now also it allows analysis of the equipment condition. So again, you can look for patterns, you can look for trends. You know, if you've got a particular make of drill that keeps breaking, that's a trend, that's a pattern, that's something you need to be doing something about. You can be preemptive. You can say, look, we've had 3 of these drills go wrong. We've got 5 of them in total. Let's have a look at the other 2. So those sort of patterns, those sort of trends you can identify, and that's really important there. But always remember, record keeping isn't actually required by the electricity at work regulations, by the law, but it is very useful to be able to do these things. Maintenance records, including test results, preferably kept throughout the working life of an electrical system, will allow the condition of equipment and the effectiveness of maintenance policies to be monitored. So what they're saying is preferably we would keep maintenance records throughout the life of electrical systems. And when we talk about electrical systems, we said that includes the fixed installation. It also includes electrical equipment, traditional portable appliances, as we call it, the things that we would normally pat test, are all classed as electrical systems. In fact, I think we talked about, anything from a pocket calculator to a power station fits within the definition of the regulations. There's no sort of voltage limits or anything like that. So just be aware, they would prefer you, and I believe it's good practice, and what we're trying to do here is promote good practice. Good practice is actually really to keep records throughout the working life of equipment. So when we buy a piece of equipment, we start the pat testing records, we enter it into the asset register, we maybe start a file for that piece of equipment that's got the manual, the warranty, the receipt for when we bought it, all of those things, all of that sort of good practice stuff, all kept there in a file. Now that could be paper, or that could be digitally. We could have a digital folder that we put the details in for these things. It doesn't really matter which way we do it. It's just we've got to keep these maintenance records. But if we've got that all the way through the life of that equipment, if anything goes wrong, we can point to that evidence and we can say, look, here's all the tests we did. Here's any repairs we carried out all the way through the life. Here's the maintenance we did all the way through the life of this equipment up to that point. And I always say, if you want to do a quick test in your own workplace, all you need to do is close your eyes, spin round and point to the first piece of equipment that you see, first piece of electrical equipment you see. Show me the records for that. Where are my records for that piece of equipment? And if you can go to your records and you can pull up the records all the way from when it was new, all the way up to that point, then you've got a perfect system. If you can't do that, then maybe there's more work that needs doing from that side of things. And I say these are aspirational standards. This is something we want to work towards. This is a guidance document, HSR 25. It's not a legal document, it's a guidance document, but it's saying we would really keep this data throughout the life of equipment, and that's obviously common sense. So without effective monitoring, duty holders cannot be certain that the requirements for maintenance has been complied with. And that's important because if you're the duty holder, but you're not actually doing the tests yourself or doing the checks yourself or doing the maintenance yourself, how do you know it's actually been done if you haven't got those records? So you could employ somebody, you could employ a pat testing contractor, you could employ a maintenance electrician or somebody like that and say, right, I need you to do this for me. But then you're taking it on trust that they've actually gone away and done that. And that's problematic because you've got no evidence, again, that they did these things. You've got no evidence it was actually carried out. You just say, well, I asked them to do it. And they could turn around and say, well, no, you didn't. You never asked me anything. So where's the evidence? Where's that duty holder? If something goes wrong, where is that evidence chain? Where's that data? So it all just comes back to the evidentiary quality of these records. And like I say, we're not keeping these records for legal requirements, or certainly not under the legal requirements of electricity at work regulations. There might be other organisations that need you to keep records. Your insurance company might want to see records. Your local authority might want to see records when they renew your licence, your entertainment's licence, or whatever it is. So again, there could be other reasons why you need to keep these records as well. But under the law, there's no legal requirement to keep records, but we can see, using the examples that I've given here on this slide, why it is common sense to do that. So what we've got here is actually a model form provided by the IET. The IET are the people who write the IET Code of Practice, no surprise, the 4th edition, soon to be 5th edition Code of Practice. And in the 4th edition Code of Practice currently, they provide some model forms. And these model forms are their suggestion of the documents that you might need to create and keep as a duty holder and actually fill in. Now, they are model forms. They're available at the IET website, and I've put the website link there at the top of the screen. So if you go onto the IET website, you'll be able to find these model forms. They're PDF forms, and the IET very kindly allow you to use these and to use these templates if you're doing your pat testing. And they are also available in the IET Code of Practice. If you've got a copy of that, they'll be in the back of the IET Code of Practice. Now, these forms, you might like the layout, you might not like the layouts, but they're good starting point really for anybody doing pat testing. So what I was going to do is just go through these forms, and then these are something you can go after the webinar, you can go and download, fill in, and you can start actually complying straight away. You can start filling in and keeping your pat records up to date. and these are the ones that are referred to in the IET Code of Practice, and they're also the ones that you'd be required to fill in if you do a City and Guilds training course, City and Guilds assessments. These would be the forms that you would be using on that. So the first one we've got here, form V1, is what's known as the equipment register. We need to have a list somewhere of all of the items that require testing or require maintenance. So all electrical equipment, we need to enter it onto a register. So we've got details on here for the organisation, the address, the responsible person. And then we've got columns on here for equipment ID number. So your equipment ID number is very, very, very important because that is the unique identification number that identifies that exact piece of equipment. So we must identify and use a unique number for each piece of equipment. I once went to a customer's premises and they'd use the same number for all IEC leads. And obviously their records were all over the shop, but they'd use the same number because it was an IEC lead. Oh yeah, they're all number 1, 2, 3, 4. We just give the same number to all IEC leads because we can't be bothered to individually number those. But the problem is, if you've got a fault, how do you prove that you tested that one? How do you prove that you carried out maintenance on that one? How do you record the details for that one when you've got 3 or 4, or 10 or 20 different ones? Different forms, we might have a 5 amp one, we might have a 13 amp one, might have a 10 amp one, but they're all the same number. So again, total lunacy. So always be careful when you're setting up your system. You need to uniquely identify each piece of equipment, and then that number should accompany that piece of equipment throughout its working life. So you issue it with a number at the start and use the same number all the way through. The reason we use the same number all the way through is for traceability. Maintenance records kept throughout the working life of the equipment, the traceability, any trends, patterns, repairs, any of that sort of thing we can track. Now, it is quite common practice. A lot of organisations, because it's easy for them, will just renumber everything every year. They just peel off the old labels, give everything a fresh number, away you go. Brilliant. Now, that's easy for the people doing the testing, but it means you've got no history, because as soon as you've peeled that label off, all of the previous maintenance you did on that item, you can't evidence it because you've got no traceability. You don't know, well, that item started off as this number, then it went to this number, then it went to that number. All you've done is when that label's come off with the number on, all of that test history's gone with it, and you're starting from scratch. All you can prove is not that you've maintained it throughout a period of time, you can prove it was tested on whatever date. So always, 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 if it's possible to do so, keep a unique asset ID number for each item and keep it throughout the life of that item. A bit like the registration number on a car or the VIN number on a car. That's a serial number that's issued directly to that piece of equipment. You can actually use, if you've got manufacturer's serial numbers, you can use manufacturer's serial numbers. The reason a lot of people don't is because not every piece of equipment, I talked about IEC leads, not every piece of equipment has a manufacturer's serial number. So there's some you are going to have to issue a number for. But also, the manufacturer's serial numbers might be about 20 digits long or something like that, and you've got to try and put all that data in and keep it correct, and there's room for errors and things. So people do tend to number equipment, but you need to come up with it. Generally, a numbering convention is good. So you might decide, right, we're going to go with 5 digits. It's all going to be numerical. So we just start with 00001 or whatever it is, and number 2, number 3, number 4, and we go through. Also, just be careful if you are creating new assets, you buy a new asset, how do you make sure that that number hasn't been used already? So in theory, your asset register would be the way you do that. You go to your asset register, you go down to the bottom of your asset register. What's the next number? Right, the next number is 01234. Right, 01234, that's it. Create the sticker, that's that asset. Put it in the asset register and away you go. So it's important to make sure that you're doing this, particularly if you've got 3 or 4 people testing. They might all be issuing numbers left, right, and centre. So it's difficult to make sure that you haven't crossed over numbers and things as well. So you do need to have systems in place for that. Sometimes people will have a roll of labels. One of them will start with a 2, one will start with a 3, one will start with a 4. So like one's the 2000s, another one's 3000s, 4000s. So you can make sure, and once you've peeled those labels off, that one hasn't been issued and it's entered into the system. But you've got to be careful how you do that. Other times people use lettering conventions, so they might put a letter at the front of it. So it could be S for Seaward. S1234 means it's Seaward 1234. Potentially, there's other options you can do in there, but just think about it, because you want to keep that number for the life of it. It wants to be a valid number, a nice easy number that can be remembered, typed in, stored, used. So again, equipment number is really, really important. Put some time into that. Location, again, the location, where is it? Try and be as detailed as possible in that, really, or as clear as possible. Ideally, if you've got a room number or something like that, a lot of buildings nowadays are broken down and they actually give official room number designations and things like that. So again, it helps with sort of, fire risk assessments and all various things, that they'll actually break the building down, and each room will be actually given a specific zone or a number or something like that. Brilliant. If you've got hotels, they'll have a room number. If you've got schools, again, you might have classroom numbers and things. But really nail it down as much as you can, because there's nothing worse than you're going out there into a big company trying to find that particular piece of equipment, and you've just got something like it's in the workshop. And the workshop could be a massive area. You haven't got a clue where it is. So again, trying to get some sort of common sense in there and a bit more detail. One bit of feedback I would say on these forms is generally I find the boxes are too small. So you may want to rejig these to allow you more room to actually put these in. And the other thing is, if you are filling in information, try and make sure that everybody who's filled it in uses the same conventions. This is very important for the next box, actually, which is equipment description. So equipment description is, what is it? Is it an IEC lead? Is it a kettle? Is it a drill? And again, try and keep to standard descriptions, because sometimes you'll have people put white Bosch kettle, and then somebody else will put, black LG kettle, or chrome, something else. Again, a lot of time we almost don't need to know. We've got the asset ID. We know where it is. We know it's a kettle. That keeps the records nice and clean, and it stops it getting all confused. Because otherwise, you come to try and say, right, if this was a computerized system, give me a list of all the kettles, and it'll just come up with none. You go, that's strange. Give me a list of all the Bosch kettles with, and then you'll get 2 of those, and give me all the list of the... So I went to a company once, and they'd got about 12 different ways of spelling microwave, because they've got micro space wave, micro dash wave, microwave one word, microwave with a capital M, microwave Bosch, microwave LG, microwave, Zanussi or whatever it was, all of these things on there. Chrome, white, grey, various permutations of it. But if you want to try and do a report about all your microwaves, it's quite hard then to actually pull out that data. So I would always say, with equipment descriptions, try and keep it short, to the point, and really what you want, actually get that information in there, because it'll have a serial number on it. You know what location it is, so you don't need to go daft with the description, really, from that side of things. Just try and keep it to the point. Serial number, sometimes you might want to keep the actual manufacturer's serial number as a backup, just in case maybe the equipment number comes off, or say they are renumbered or something like that, and you lose track. Having the equipment serial number there as a backup's not a bad idea. I do say a lot of people try and not keep the serial numbers, just because purely the length of it and the time it takes. But again, that's not necessarily a safety-related reason for doing it. That's just a sort of laziness reason for not keeping it. Now, the next bit on here is actually the frequency of formal visual inspection and the frequency of combined inspection and test. So what they're saying is, we've put it in the equipment register, and then at the point we put it in the register, the duty holder then will put in the initial frequency. So they'll sit down, they'll put it in, they'll say, right, initially, this is going to be 6-month visual inspection, 12-month combined inspection and test, or whatever they decide, based on a risk assessment, obviously, or a company policy, which is based on a risk assessment. We talked about this last week. And they put that in. And this is how then you monitor when it needs testing again. So you've put it into the asset register. At that point, we've got no test records. We've got nothing on here. Now, a lot of people, and I have said this before, would want to test new equipment before it entered the workplace. But there's no actual sort of 100% you must do that. It's just sort of good practice thing. So Again, generally you'd fill in this document, you put the frequencies in, and then when that frequency comes up, 6 months time you do your visual, 12 months time you do combined inspection and test, and then obviously you're generating the test records. And if your frequency changes, then obviously you need to go back to this document again and just amend that and say, no, actually we've upped that now, it's now 12 months and 24 months. So again, you can make changes on there. So this is your equipment register. This is the starting point. This is the first point for everything really, is go around and put everything you've got on a list. And then you can start doing the risk assessments, and then you can start testing, and you know what you've got from there. So everybody must have an equipment register, very essential document for us to have. So the next sheet we're going to look at now is the combined inspection and test record. So this is effectively this is where you record your inspections and your tests. Now it's quite a long form. It is sort of portrait style, and it's quite a long form. So I broke it up over a few slides, and we'll go through and really look at it box by box and see what information's on here. So again, we can put down the details for the inspector, who they are, what organisation they represent, what date the testing was actually done, what date the certificate was completed, and who the client was. Now, the next sort of thing you've got to get your head round on here, which I don't really agree with on this form, is the fact that each item you test or each piece of equipment you test is given a separate column. So you can imagine this form would be good for 4 particular items. Now, the reason why I'm not particularly keen on this as a design is because if you come back again next year, you have to then put all the data in again. So you'd put next year's date on, and you'd have to do all the data again. Whereas previously, we have actually had forms similar to this, where effectively, instead of where the item numbers were, you actually put the item details in, and then you just put your dates. So when you did your inspection, you filled in one column, and then the next time you came back and you did your inspection again, you filled in another column and then another column. So you weren't repeating the data, you were keeping your history effectively on this form, and you were using the form and filling it out as we go. So again, you may or may not be happy with this as it's laid out, and you might want to tweak it, which is perfectly fine. You can do that. There's no sort of, specificity in there. There's no law that says you must use a particular form. This is the IET form, and I say this is the one that be used if you're doing, say, a City and Guilds exam. This is what you'd use, but obviously you can use this as a guide to make your own forms up from that. So we've got inspector and client details at the top, then we move on down. So equipment ID number, that's the same number that we've already put on the asset register. Description, again, same as what we put on the asset register. Then we're into a bit more technical stuff. So construction class, is it class 1 or class 2? Then type of equipment. Now, the good thing about this form, when you see it in real life in the IET Code of Practice, on the back, you'll notice on here, it's got note 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. On the back of the form, it explains to you what each of these boxes are for and what you need to put in. So there is guidance there, which is really useful. So type, S is stationary, IT, movable, portable, handheld, or fixed. So when it's type, is it stationary? Is it movable? Is it fixed? So you just put the appropriate letter in there. And then location, again, that's the information that we talked about from the asset register. What location is it actually in? Where is it stored? So moving on down, next box would again be the frequency for the formal vision combined inspection test. Again, that data is taken from the asset register, so it's just copying it over. The next 3 boxes are make. So who is the maker? Who's the manufacturer of the equipment? What model of equipment is that? So is it the deluxe? Is it the 1, 2, 3, 4? Is it the SK123 or whatever it is? We can go down this if it's Pat testers for us. Is it an Apollo? Is it a Prime test? And then the serial number. So again, the manufacturer's serial number if there is one on there. Now, some more information that you'd probably take from the rating plate of the equipment. So it's saying voltage, if different from 230 volts. So again, if it was 110 or 12 volts or something like that, you could put the voltage in there. Rating, and you can either put that in watts, so the power rating, so say 1 kilowatt, or amps, so you might say it's 10 amps. So again, you can put either of those in. And then the next one down is the fuse rating. So is it a 13 amp? Is it a 5 amp? Is it a 3 amp? Again, you check the fuse, obviously. Make sure that what rating it should be aligns with the fuse that's in there. And then obviously you record that down on the form. Now the next bit is where we actually record the visual inspection and the test results. So the visual inspection, and these are just a ticker across. So the socket outlet, this is generally the socket outlet that it's plugged into. Is that okay? Tick. The plug, is the plug okay? Tick. The flex, the lead, the cable, is that okay? Yeah. The body, so that's the body of the equipment, the enclosure, tick. And then if there's any others that you want to comment on, particularly if it's anything else that you found that's faulty, obviously you can put other in there, write down what it is, and then obviously tick or cross that generally as you go. So that's really the visual inspection bit. And if you were just doing a formal visual inspection, you'd only complete to that. You wouldn't bother completing the other bits on here. So you wouldn't go down and complete the test results, because obviously you wouldn't have test results, because you'd just be doing a visual inspection. Now the next box, the test results, so earth continuity. So it's saying you do your earth continuity measurements. Obviously if it's class 1 equipment, you'd put that in. Insulation resistance, put the value in there. If you're testing a lead and you've done a polarity test, again, tick or cross for polarity. Functional check, we talked about functional checks. Obviously turn the thing on, make sure it works, try it in all its different modes of operation. Yep, tick that. And then if there's any other, so for example maybe an RCD test that you did, or a leakage test maybe, or something, you could include that in there and actually record those values down. So again, just a manual way of going through and recording all of that data in the boxes provided. Now the final part on here is really a couple of decisions we've got to make in the final detail. So suitable for the environment. So it's saying, is that equipment suitable for the environment in which it's going to be used? Yes or no? Any comments that you want to make about that? So is there anything that you've particularly seen that you think is, you know, maybe something that's wearing, or something it's a pass but you need to keep an eye on it, or maybe something that was missing, so maybe the handle wasn't present, or the guard wasn't present, or something like that. So the equipment wouldn't necessarily be unsafe, but it needs this extra item with it, or anything like that. Again, we can put that in the comments field. I would always say, be on the safe side. If there's anything you're not sure about, just comment in there, and then you've communicated that information to the duty holder, because the duty holder should check all the comments. And again, straight away, you've got that there. You've got that nailed in. Next one down is the big decision. Is this equipment suitable for continued use? Yes or no? So this is effectively the pass-fail box. This is you saying, as a competent person, in your opinion, this equipment is suitable for continued use. Yes or no? And your initials. Your initials go in there for traceability. So again, very important from that side of things that you actually put your initials in there as the details. Now, a bit that I've included at the bottom here, which actually you need to be aware of because it's quite important, is the options you've got for filling in the boxes. So quite often it'll say, you know, there'll be a few here where it says yes or no. So Y or N, you put a Y or an N. If it's a tick indicates a pass. So if something's passed, we would put a tick. If it fails, we would put a cross. Now, if it's not applicable, so for example, a class 1 test. A class 1 test has an earth continuity. A class 2 test does not have an earth continuity. So if you've got a class 2 items, the earth continuity box, you would put in NA, not applicable, because it's not applicable to that particular piece of equipment. However, if we've got a piece of class 1 item and we couldn't do the earth continuity test because there's no exposed earthed parts to check to, that wouldn't be not applicable. An earth continuity test is applicable to that piece of equipment, we just didn't check it. So in that case, that would go down as an NC, or not checked, because we didn't check that particular item. It would be applicable, but we didn't check it. So we're letting the duty holder know that we didn't check it, and then probably further down in the comments, we might put no exposed metal parts. So again, we're confirming why we didn't check it. So just be careful on that when you are filling these things in. Just make sure you use the right conventions on there, because sometimes people, when it's a pass, they write pass instead of a tick, or they'll put a tick instead of a yes, or they'll put a not checked instead of a not applicable, or a not applicable instead of a not checked, or those sort of things. So again, just be very careful when you are going through filling these in, just to make sure that it's clear, so that if ever anything goes wrong and somebody needs to check the records, they can see from the records that you're competent, you know what you're doing, you took the time to actually fill these records out neatly, so they're clear, they can be read, not scrawled writing. And again, talking about evidentiary values, but if this is potentially evidence, we don't want this written in pencil, because again, it could be rubbed out and changed. So if we're doing this, we want this in nice clear pen, we want it nice clearly readable from that side of things. One thing that isn't on here, interestingly, that might be worth including is there's no mention on here of the test equipment serial number. So quite often what we'd want to do is, if we are doing a test, we want to actually record the test equipment serial number on there somewhere, because that means it's traceable, and we can say, right, that's actually traced to that instrument was calibrated, we did a checkbox test on that instrument, so all of that is traceable then. So again, from a traceability point of view, having somewhere on here recorded the equipment serial number, the test equipment serial number, would be really useful addition to this form as well. So those two, the equipment register and the test and inspection forms, are really the main two that you need, and they're the two that you really need to get familiar with. There are others, however, that you may want to include as a duty holder. So a repair register. A repair register is again, as the name says, effectively, we're keeping a register of any equipment that is repaired or is put in for repair. So again, organisation, responsible person, address, equipment number, we're keeping that unique number so we can see the history. Who is the customer? So who's the person who owns that equipment? Realistically, who's the, is it the team leader in a certain area? Is it a particular tradesperson within the company? Or is it actually a customer, who's paying you to repair this equipment? Description of the equipment, serial number, who the repairer was, and then we're signing to say, yes, it's been repaired and it's suitable to return to use. Tick, sign, and date, so that we've got that trace of where that equipment was actually returned into service. Now, obviously, the flip side of the coin here, and probably actually you'd use these forms the other way round, is the faulty equipment register. So generally, if you've got a piece of equipment, when you do a visual inspection, or you do a user check even, or formal combined inspection test, any piece of equipment that's found to be faulty, say even if it was a user check, so say you'd done a user check on your own equipment, that would then be entered into the faulty equipment register. Again, we've got organisation, responsible person, address, the date on which that equipment was actually reported as faulty, and you might want to have a time on there as well, potentially. Equipment ID number, what the fault is, the location, and what action was taken. Where did you put it? Did you remove it from service? What have you done with it? So you might, if you get a piece of faulty equipment, fill in the faulty equipment register, but that's then where the repair register comes in, because the repair register takes equipment that's been entered onto the faulty equipment register, and the outcome of that then comes back down to what's happened with that piece of equipment. So again, these two things work closely together. The final one in here, Form V6, is actually test instrument record. And I haven't included all of this because there's loads of it. But it's all pretty much the same, as you can see there. So the whole point of this is when we do our checkbox sequence, when we actually check the ongoing accuracy of equipment, so whether we do that weekly, monthly, whatever it is, we would actually fill in a form. And the form on here, basically, we've got organisation, responsible person, address, and then we actually carry out tests for low resistance and high resistance, as they're saying on here. But again, what you want to do is test all of the functions of the equipment. So even if it's got RCD test or whatever, we want to be able to check that with a checkbox. So this is the low resistance range. So what type of instrument is it? What model of instrument is it? What's the serial number of the instrument? When was it last calibrated? And then date of test. So it could be 1st of July. And then what we do is we actually test at half an ohm. So we measure half an ohm. So you go on the checkbox. If you've got a checkbox that does half an ohm. And then you put down, what do we actually get? we actually got half an ohm, deviation 0%, and then we carry on. And you work your way down, and obviously this form I haven't included all, but the next one will be, right, do it at 1, do it at an ohm, do it at 5 ohms, do it at 10 ohms, do it at 50 ohms, whatever it is, and then start on the mega ohm range and that side of things. And obviously I say that you make up your own one to suit the instrument that you've got and the checkbox that you've got available. And then the idea is that next time round you come and do it, you fill in the next column, you put the date in, 1st of August. So put it in 1st of August and we go through, and you should be able to see if there's any changes, if anything's drifted or anything's moved, because as long as you're using the same instrument and the same standard resistances, it should be there or thereabouts. You will naturally get variations for temperature and contact resistance and all the things we talked about before, but realistically you should get reasonable. So this is our check for ongoing accuracy. This is checking that the equipment is there. So again, if you are a duty holder, how are we recording that? Now, if you're lucky enough to have an Apollo tester, we've got a checkbox. It does an automatic sequence. It reminds you every day, every week, every month, whatever you set it to, and it will do that, and it will record that. And when you download it into PackGuard, all of those results are downloaded in. It says, yep, this person did this test at this time, and all the good information, all the results are there, and you can report on that if you want to. So from that side of things, there are automated options available to you, but the very basic system is you've got your resistors, you've got your form, you go through, do your check for ongoing accuracy and record those at a frequency that's specified by the duty holder. So that was just a quick run through of the IET model forms. Again, go onto the IET website, get your IET code of practice, download those and print them out, and you can use those forms, and they are very good starting points, but again, probably worth adapting those, make your own, and actually make those fit exactly your application. But they are a very good starting point for the information that's included on there, and I think that's anybody who's setting up a system for pat testing, this is really a good starting point. So here's a diagram that you've probably seen me use before on things, and I'm just going to use this really to compare existing and older systems of pat testing, older systems of record keeping with the more modern automated systems, and really do a compare and contrast on that. So you'll be familiar with this system, and as we said, this is the way pat testing works really. We start by compiling the asset register. We just saw the IET's asset register there, so we compile the asset register, we determine the factors, we carry out the risk assessment, we define the frequency, we perform the tests, record the results, label the assets, keep those records up to date, and we carry on round. So we compile the asset register, we keep the asset register up to date, and we go round. So day to day, that's what the duty holder needs to ensure is going on. That's our role as a duty holder within an organisation to make sure that's happening. And there's various ways we can do that. Now, the old ways of doing this, the traditional ways of doing this, if you like, were really the asset register we do with a form like you've seen there, with a pen and paper, and we'd write it out longhand. Now that still might be great if you've got a system where effectively you've only got a few assets, then if you've got 20 assets, this is a perfect system for doing it. Then carry out the risk assessment. Well, we've talked about last week about risk assessment, but generally a lot of time it was just pick a date on the calendar. Right, 12 months, yeah, that's when the pat testing needs doing. No risk-based assessments, it's just 12 months, that's it, done. Then we obviously carry out the testing, so we've got a picture there of one of our old Seaward pat testers, but yep, carry out the inspection and testing using a sort of, well, in this case it is a downloadable tester, but an old tester, but then we would actually record the results, so potentially, again, we might be recording the results manually. We might be actually just writing those down on a sheet, similar to the IET ones that we saw there. We would label the assets, so that may involve, a sort of permanent marker and trying to write very, very small on a label. And that side of things, so a big roll of sticky labels, writing out the assets, writing out things, signing the labels with a permanent marker. Maintaining the records, we've just got loads and loads of records, paper-based records going all the way back to the year dot with all the records in there and things like that. So it's a manual paper-based system. Again, If you've only got a small organisation, you've only got a few items, this might be perfect. You know, we're not saying that you have to do anything different than this. This would perfectly comply with the regulations, but there are easier ways to do it. So, the modern ways of doing this. All of these things you can do with our Apollo Pat Tester. So our Apollo Pat Tester, as you go around and you type in the asset IDs, or it automatically increments the ID numbers, it's compiling your asset register, it's building that up inside the tester. You're putting in all of the various functions. You can use the tester to carry out risk assessments at an item by item level, and obviously that defines the frequencies. No surprise, we can actually use the Pat Tester there to perform the Pat tests and record the results. So all of that lot is done by the Pat Tester, automatically installed in there. It then automatically prints the label, so we can get the label automated. We download all those results into our software, our PatGuard system, and that allows us to create reports, maintain the records, keep everything up to date. And then the next time round, when the process goes round, because we've actually used a label printer that prints the barcodes, we can actually then use a barcode scanner and make the process even quicker, because when we go round, we scan the item, it automatically knows all the stuff, so it goes, right, I'll need to do this test. We carry on doing the test, records the results, prints another label, and away we go again. So it does really make that process a hell of a lot quicker. And I know this, you know, I would be advocating this Seaward system. And again, if you've got smaller organizations, this is why we have, you know, our Prime Test range of products and things like that there. We have solutions for everybody. So don't think I'm saying everybody's got to go out and buy an Apollo 600 plus Elite kit with PatGuard software, because you haven't. It'd be very nice if you did, and obviously you wouldn't be disappointed. But there are options in between. So this is why we actually design these testers. You know, we've been doing this over a long time to get to this evolution, and everything's based around this cycle of doing testing, and where do our testers actually fit into that cycle. We've designed everything in so to make it as easy as quick to get round that cycle, keep those records up to date. But I always joke about this with our Pat testers. Our Pat testers started off as a piece of test equipment, and then they became a piece of test equipment that stored records. Now with our Apollo, we've pretty much got a piece of record keeping equipment that also does Pat tests, because the importance of that data and that record keeping is really, really key to Pat testing. It's about creating that evidence, maintaining those records, having that data there to analyze and be able to prove if anything goes wrong, there's the data. Because once the test's done, the only thing that's behind, you know, you've got a label and you've got the records. And if those records aren't there and you've lost the records or you haven't got the records, there's no proof you actually did it. So nowadays, Pat testing has flipped on its head. It used to be something you used test equipment for to do this, and the record keeping was almost secondary. Now the record keeping is one of the primary drivers behind the design for the testers, and the Pat testing is just a part of that process, as you can see on here. So that's really just a quick overview of the old ways of doing things, the paper-based records, manual testers, manual records, and just showing you what you can do nowadays with modern Pat testing equipment, which is designed and built around record keeping. So on this slide, I'm just going to have a look at record keeping systems and really look at the pros and cons between the different types of record keeping systems that are available. So the three systems that we're going to look at here is the old school pen and paper, spreadsheets, so actually using a spreadsheet on a computer, and the Seaward PatGuard 3.4 software, so the latest version of Seaward's PatGuard software. So if we just look at the pros really, to start with for pen and paper. So pen and paper, you've got to admit, it's cheap. It's really cost effective. Everybody's got some means of pen and paper around. So really the initial startup costs are massively low and really accessible. You can just go and get that and you're away. It's reliable. Record keeping systems using pen and paper are reliable. You're not going to have any, the battery run out on your pen, or any problems with connecting to Wi-Fi or anything like that. It's reliable. It's there. You've got your pen, you've got your paper. Pretty much everything's going to work. There's no sort of problems with that. It's available to everybody, so everybody's got access to your pen and paper. Pretty much everybody can access your records, so there's no problems with users. There's no problems with having to buy laptops for people or licenses or anything like that. It's accessible. It's easy there, and generally, apart from maybe how to fill the form in, there's no training required. So pen and paper, there's a lot of good things about pen and paper, really, and particularly for small organisations. Again, works. So the cons, it's slow. It is actually slow writing these results out by hand, particularly when you're doing it again the next year and again, the repetition. It is actually quite a slow process of writing these things out rather than it being done automatically. Backup. With a pen and paper system, there's no means of backup, unless you're going to photocopy everything and then you've got paper records and all this sort of thing, or you're going to scan things in. Not good. A bit of a tongue-in-cheek one there. Obviously, using up paper, it kills trees from that side of things. So a lot of offices and people try and keep paperless where we can from that side of things. And one maybe you haven't thought about here is it looks bad. If I'd paid somebody to do my PAT testing and they turn up with a scruffy notebook and a biro and they're just writing the results down by hand, it doesn't give me the confidence that this person really knows what they're doing, that they've invested in the equipment, that they're worth the money that I'm paying them. If I've got somebody comes along with a set up computerized system and it's all there, they've got a tablet or something, or they've got an Apollo and they're putting the data in, it just looks that much more professional. So again, somebody who's just scribbling results down on pen and paper. But also, again, you just think about this evidence. So you have an accident, and in comes an inspector from the HSE or something like that, and they ask for your PAT testing records, and they've got something that looks like a spider crawled across it, that somebody's scribbled in by hand. Again, what's that going to say to them? What's that going to say? So again, that's something you might need to think of. Really, is just that it looks bad. Not always people don't always think of these things, but it does. If you imagine if you were a customer and you see somebody turning up and scribbling the results down on a bit of paper with a biro, it doesn't look the best. So the next step up from that, which a lot of people do, and it's quite a good option, is spreadsheets. So actually setting up on your computer a spreadsheet or a Word document or something like that to actually do it. So it is quite cost effective. Generally, you've probably got the computer already. You've probably got access to the program already, so there's nothing actually you've got to add cost there. You can back it up. So you can save that data, you can save it to a memory stick, you can email it to somebody, you can use Dropbox or something like that, some sort of cloud backup storage to actually store that data. So again, not a bad way of doing it really from that side of things. Easily available, yeah, most people have got it on their computer already, and the reporting side of things looks more professional. You can actually create better looking reports. You can even search results, you can store in results, you can sort your records and things like that. You can maybe set up conditional formatting and all sorts of things on there. So you can actually make it look a lot more professional, actually get more out of that data, and I say it is searchable. So again, it's a lot more usable to the customer as well. So the cons, obviously, there's an admin cost to that. You've got to actually get somebody to type that data in. Remember, it's not uploading straight from the PAT tester. You're actually typing in the results into a sheet. So for every item you do, instead of writing the things out with a pen and paper, you're typing away. So there's a lot more admin involved in that. Or sometimes people have a double system where they're writing it in pen and paper and then they give it to an admin person to type up. So again, you've got a duplication in there. No data comms. So what we're saying with the spreadsheet is you're not actually been able to upload or download that data directly off the PAT tester. So there's no actual data communications there. You're just literally typing in the results and the records as you go through. Spreadsheets, obviously there can be errors in there because you are manually inputting the data. So if you've got a long serial number, there is a chance that you might type the numbers in wrong and that errors can actually creep into there. And another one, we talked about evidence, and this is something where you need to be aware of evidence, that it's editable. So somebody can fiddle the results, from want of a better term. So you could have somebody, if you're a duty holder and you say, right, I want you to go out and test everything in that school. Bring me back the records. Well, it has happened in the past that somebody's just gone home, created a spreadsheet, filled in what they think may be in the school in the spreadsheet, and given that back to the person and said, here you go, I've done your testing. And again, the records are there. It looks okay. And this is why, again, people like HSE and others sometimes look at these sort of records, pen and paper records or spreadsheets, and actually look at it and think, is how much to actually believe these records? Because it would be very easy, somebody does no testing at all, they have an accident. Oh God, we've had electrical accidents. We need to create some records. Right, get a spreadsheet out. Let's make some records now. So again, where's your evidence? Where's the evidentiary value of that? Where's the traceability? So it is that little thing. I mean, again, how far do you go? But this is why people generally prefer things like PDF documents or using some sort of proprietary software where it's very difficult for the customer then or the pat tester to actually fiddle those results. So again, the fact that they are editable is a problem. It is a con. So if we go onto the PatGuard software, if we look at this as a record keeping system, obviously the first thing on there we've put on there is designed for pat testing. So it's obviously it's actually designed around the data you need. It's designed around the industry, and we've been working on this for a long time. Obviously, you can see we're on version 3.4. So we've been working on this for a long time and making it better, making it fit the type of thing. So the database structure, the sites, the locations, the assets, it's all written around that pat testing application. So it's not like you've got to actually design the spreadsheet or you've got to design the form that you're going to fill in. It's all there for you. Big pro is the data communication. So obviously the data is automatically recorded within the tester. You connect the tester to your laptop or maybe your mobile phone. You send the results back to PatGuard. All of that stuff goes in. You haven't got to copy it. You haven't got to do anything. It just goes into the data. And then when you come to do retesting, you can actually get that data back out again, put it back into your pat testing, and go and do retesting. So the data communication saves you so much time, and it just makes that, and it removes the errors, it removes the back office stuff. If you just think about the amount of time you might have to pay an admin person or something like that to actually do this, where it's automatic, it's just done, it's automatic, the data just goes in. Professional looking reports, obviously that's a big bonus as well. We've got reports built into PatGuard that you can customize, so you can actually generate your reports professionally very, very quickly, and they've got all the information that needs to be contained within them, and it's just a few clicks. You can create a PDF report, and again, as I said, PDF report is ideal because it's not editable there, it's traceable. We've got all that. And again, just talking about the data comms side of things, obviously security wise with the data comms, that it's very, very hard for the person doing the pat testing to edit or fiddle those results, because we do use a Seaward data format, so they would have to be created on the tester to go through to actually get into the records. So anybody who messes about with it afterwards, there is traceability there to see whether that's happened or not. And obviously it can be backed up, so you can obviously back up the data, and that's a big pro really from that side of things. Cons, obviously there is always a downside to these things, but we always look at these as we're open and honest about these things. Cost. Obviously PatGuard's software is going to cost you. We do an annual subscription, which is about 120 something pounds a year, something like that. So about £10 a month really you're looking at for the 1 year subscription. Or we do an outright purchase option, so there is an outright purchase option available where you can just buy PatGuard outright basically from that side of things, and you don't need to worry about the annual subscriptions. So there is a cost to that. It's not a huge cost. If you're doing it as a business, you look at how much time you're saving and what you're getting for all of this. You could very easily spend, the same amount of time. If you're talking £10 a month, if you've got somebody on £10 an hour, they spend an hour a month doing their reports or writing the spreadsheets or converting the records over or whatever it is. Again, you've pretty much got your money back there really from that side of things. So the cost, there is a cost. It is more expensive than the other two options, but again, you've got to look at what you're saving as well by doing that. Training, you may need to actually spend some time learning the PackGuard system. We have got some online courses freely available on our training portal. So there's about an hour and a half's worth of videos of me talking about PackGuard on there. So we do actually provide training and things like that. But you may actually need to allow for your staff to get used to using the system. Flexibility, obviously PackGuard's not massively flexible because it's designed for doing effectively pat testing records. It's not as flexible as some of the other systems. So with the spreadsheet, if you wanted to add in some extra columns or extra data, you can do that. Whereas with a fixed proprietary software, it's not easy to do that. And obviously one of the cons on here that we have to put on here is it relies on IT. A lot of the problems that we get with PackGuard is down to people's IT. Either their IT department has not allowed them to have permission, or they haven't got admin rights to install this, or all of those sort of wonderful things that happen with computers. So generally, a lot of the problems isn't related to PackGuard itself; it's related to people's IT systems, and their computer or their network won't let them do certain things. So again, that's something that has to be brought in mind when you're doing it. You certainly won't get that with pen and paper. But we like to be open. We like to actually point out on here, and we're not saying that you need to go down any specific route on here. We're just showing you what's available if you do go down certain routes. And again, if you've only got a few items, pen and paper system is perfectly acceptable from that side of things, and it's really up to your duty holders to actually decide how much work you've got. And you'd be surprised, you don't need to have too many assets before it's PackGuard effectively pays for itself, because the amount of admin and the amount of back office stuff that you're doing with these other things. So one thing I haven't mentioned on here, and I don't know whether it crops up later on, I can't remember including it later on, but data security, again, is a very important thing. If you are actually keeping any of these records, whether it's paper records or that, we've got GDPR nowadays. So always think about the data security of your pat testing records and make sure that they are kept in a secure place. Last thing you want is to have your pat testing records hacked, and you've got lists there of all your customers' premises, what's in every room, what condition it's in, all of those sort of things. That could be a very awkward conversation to go to customers and actually say, sorry, we've lost all your data, and that's potentially, a hacker's got possession of that. So always think as well about your data security as you're going through. That's another top tip. So modern reporting options. What options have we actually got for creating reports? So in PackGuard, we've got a wide range of reports available. And reports can be easily customized. So we can add logos to these reports, and details of your company and things like that. You can actually change things like colors on the reports. You can add certificates on there. And one of the big things, obviously, we've got, particularly with the Apollo 600 Plus, is there's a camera. So you can take pictures with the pat tester of your items, and you can actually include those pictures in there. You can, what sometimes people don't realize is you can actually include your own pictures too. So if you do take pictures with a mobile phone or another camera, you can actually include those into PackGuard. You don't have to use the Apollo to take pictures. You can include your own full pictures as well. But it's one thing that customers really find useful when they get reports, is that we've got pictures of failures particularly included in there as well. So really important. We can also do reporting on non-electrical items. This is something record keeping that we haven't talked about yet. Is in the Apollos, we've actually got this function for what we call user tests. And a user test, we can actually put in any data we want or any inspection we want. So if you wanted to do a ladder test, a ladder inspection, you could write that into your Apollo. If you were doing a Legionella test and you were measuring maybe hot tap temperature, cold tap temperature, you could actually store that data in your Apollo, you can upload it to PackGuard, and you can report on it. So actually just think about that when you are building these, your systems. If you've got any non-electrical items, so things that you're not going to pat test but do need regular inspection, if that's, slings and hoists, that could just be a basic asset check. It could be fire doors, fire extinguishers, all sorts of things people do. Again, you could write those reports in there, and you can actually report on those. Now, another thing that we've got included in PackGuard, which a lot of people may have remembered from the past, we had this in PackGuard 2 originally, and then we reintroduced it, 12, 18 months ago now, is Time Manager. Now, what Time Manager does is Time Manager, you can upload your files from your pat tester into Time Manager, And what Time Manager does is it plots those against a timeline. So it will show you when you did every test or when your employee did every test. So what you should see for your employee is maybe they started work at 8 o'clock, they carried on doing so many tests an hour, they had a break in the middle of the morning for about, quarter of an hour, then they came back, then they had an hour for lunch, come back from that, and they finally finished testing about 5 o'clock and knocked off and it's all done. So you would see that on the graph. You'd actually see that. Whereas if you came along and you saw that somebody, turned up at 10 o'clock in the morning, did 200 tests between 10 and 11 o'clock, and then there's no test for the rest of the day, that would give you an idea of that person had just come in and maybe just connected up a lead and just kept pressing pass, and done that. So it is very good for actually monitoring what's going on and actually making sure that the testing is actually being carried out correctly. Another thing you can use this for is actually when you are looking at how do we allocate time to jobs, how do we manage the time of our staff, because some places that you go to, you may go to a particular job and everything's spread out. It's hard to get to stuff. It's all in locked rooms. You've got to do some disassembly. You've got to take desks apart to get at items and unplug things from floor sockets. So you could come to it and say, oh, actually, yeah, I remember this location. I only managed to do 50 in a day then. Whereas other locations you might go to and go, oh yeah, that was great. They just brought me a big box of leads, put it down on the desk, and I just sat there all day testing these leads, and I managed to do 300. So again, you can actually use this information when you're going back to jobs to either provide correct pricing, so you've priced in, you know what you're pricing for, or also to actually work out how much manpower it takes to do those jobs and be able to plan your workloads a little bit better. So Time Manager, again, is a great function that we've got back in PackGuard now that gives you the ability to actually look at what went on a time axis, and you can see how long it has taken to do these items and keep a track of that. So that was just a few extra bits there just to talk to you about some of the modern reporting options that are available within our PackGuard software. Something, again, to think about is labeling systems. Now, there's two different options, really, and this is something we just wanted to discuss. You can go down the handwritten label option, and a lot of people do go down the handwritten label option, and I think, it's interesting just to explore the pros and cons of how we see it with both. So handwritten labels, obviously, they're a lot cheaper. So you buy a big roll of labels and you write them out by hand, peel them off, put them on a sticker. It's reliable. There's nothing to go wrong there. There's no technology. Nothing's going to run out of batteries. You've got your roll of stickers. You've got your pen. As long as your pen doesn't run out of ink, you're away. Range available. Obviously, you can get your own labels done. You can get bespoke labels with your company logo on and all that sort of thing. So there is a wide range available. And there's no hardware needed. You don't need a printer or a scanner or anything like that. You just got a roll of labels and a pen. Away you go. The downside, they're handwritten. So one, you've got to sit down and write it out by hand. Two, it's tiny little boxes you're trying to write it on. Sometimes you can't read them. They're illegible. It's difficult with that. So second point on there, you get errors. People type in the wrong information. Write the wrong information. They write the wrong serial number, for example, or, like I say, screw up the writing. Slow. It is quite a slow process to write these things out by hand. It takes time, whereas if they're just zipping out of a printer, it's totally different. And also fraud. Fraud is a big one. We're always worried about people just getting a big roll of pat testing stickers, running around, putting stickers on everything. There you go. That's it. And then claiming the money for it, or, claiming that they did the test that they didn't actually do. So just handwritten stickers and that side of things is potentially a way where people could be fraudulent if they wanted to be. Now, if we contrast that with actually using a printer and scanner setup like the Seaward systems, one of the big pros for it is the speed. So speed of printing, for one thing. So effectively you press print and out comes the label pretty much straight away. So it is quicker than being handwritten. But also, one of the things now with our QR code system, and also with the normal code 39 barcodes, is the speed of retest. So effectively, with a QR code, you can scan the QR code off the Seaward labels, and the tester then automatically knows the item number, the description, the location, what test sequence was used. So effectively, then you can just go test. So you scan the label, press test. You haven't had to put any of that data in. It automatically knows that data. So the speed of retest is so much quicker. And again, with upload, if you've uploaded results into the memory of the tester, you just use a normal barcode scanner, not the QR code, just normal scanner. You scan it. It says, I've seen this information before. Do you want to use these details? Yes, I do. Bang, straight in. So the actual speed of retest is really, really important on that, but also just the general print speed. No errors. Yeah, you're not going to get a typo. You're not going to get them getting the number wrong or anything like that, because the data that's been put into the pat tester is what's going to come out on the label. That's it. That data is going to come out. It's there. And again, it's going to be accurate, because if there's a barcode on there, the barcode comes out. It's not like somebody can change the number or anything like that, because the data's in the barcode, the number, so they can't really sort of edit it or fiddle it in that side of things. We feel it looks professional. If you go along and you've got your printer, you're printing out a professional looking label, you know, it looks like you know what you're doing, it looks like you're professional at your job, and it looks like it's, you know, it's worth the money that you're being paid to do the job. One that often gets overlooked is reprinting. So how many times do you get a label and you've got your label and you accidentally stick it on wrong, or you rip it, or you smudge it with your thumb or something like that? Well, if you're putting labels off a roll, you've only got one that's got that number on potentially. So you'd have to peel another one off and then give it a different number, or maybe you have to peel it off and write in the number on, things like that. Whereas with the actual printers, we can just print 2 labels, 3 labels. All we have to do is just hit the button again, out comes another label. So if you've got, say, a kettle and a base, you want to put the same label on the kettle and the base because they're a set. Print, out comes 2 labels, one on the kettle, one on the base, done. So again, it's quite good for that if you want repeats with the same number, particularly if you're using barcodes, because again, if you're using pre-printed barcode labels, there will only be one with each number on in that pre-printed roll. So if you mess it up, you've lost it. Whereas, you know, with the printers, you can just print another one on there. In the cons, obviously the cost. So it does cost more to use the printers and the scanners than it does to actually use a handwritten roll of labels. Again, you need to do the maths on that and actually look at how much time you save and that side of things, and how much you're paying for your labels, but generally it is higher cost. It does rely on hardware, so you're going to have to charge up your printer, you're going to have to charge up your scanner, obviously you're going to have to make sure your Bluetooth's connected and all those sort of things. So there is an extra hardware element to that you don't have with handwritten labels. But again, these things are reliable, you know, they are pretty rock solid once they're set up correctly. Specific label options, there's only certain label sizes we can use, there's only certain label formats. So again, you are tied into those, but you know, they are pretty well designed for the application, and it doesn't really cause much of a problem from that side of things. You just have to be aware that you can only get certain sizes and certain label layouts. And the other thing is that they're not available for all testers. So if you've got a tester, for example, like our Prime Test 100, our Prime Test 100 doesn't work with a scanner or doesn't work with a printer. However, through the magic of our Pat Mobile app, obviously you can use the Pat Mobile app as a barcode scanner, and it will connect with a printer via Bluetooth. So you can use them that way around. So even though the tester doesn't necessarily work directly with a printer or scanner, by using the app, you can actually get around that. So again, that's a good option really from that side of things. So the modern barcoding systems, we talked about barcoding. This is a picture here of our latest 2D barcode scanner. And what we mean by a 2D barcode is, instead of the old 1D barcodes, the sort you'd see in the supermarket on your shopping, for example, these are actually 2D barcodes. Now, they are battery operated and Bluetooth connectivity, so you haven't got any cables dragged about or anything like that. You can just use these via Bluetooth, and they're quite quick and easy to move around. There's various options available. There's the old CCD type charge couple device type barcode scanners. Again, we used to use those on some of our older testers. Generally nowadays, the 1D barcodes actually have a laser, so they'll actually have a laser scanner. But the modern barcode scanners actually are what we call barcode imagers. So this one that you see on the slide here actually has a little digital camera in it. And when you actually scan the barcode, the digital camera almost takes a picture and then it converts that into the data that's in there. So when I was talking about a 2D barcode scanner, to be able to do these QR codes, the 2D barcodes, the square barcodes, you have to have a barcode imager for doing that. You can't just do that with a normal straight line laser scanner. So barcode formats, as I say, 1D against 2D. So the 1D barcodes, all the 1D barcode does is it just a code 39 barcode, and it just inputs a number. So when you scan that with your tester, all you're doing is inputting a number. So instead of you typing 1234, you scan it and it automatically puts in 1234. If you've got longer numbers and things like that, obviously that's quicker and it saves you any errors. If you've uploaded the data into the tester's memory, at that point it'll say, 1234, I've tested that before. Is that a kettle in the science lab? And you'll say, yes. And then you carry on and do the testing. So if the data's in the memory of the tester, it'll look it up anyway. Where the 2D barcodes, the Seaward QR codes differ, is we actually store some of the testing data in the barcode. So rather than keeping that data just in the memory of the tester, we store it in the barcode. So in the barcode, you've actually got the asset ID, the description, what test sequence was used, what the site was, what the location was. So again, Seaward's new QR code system actually stores part testing data optically within the QR code. So it's really great because you've got the data there. So you don't need to worry about uploading data to the tester. So if you've got 2 or 3 testers, doesn't really matter. You just go around, scan the barcodes, and away you go. And we've also got a QR data viewer app that you can download for free. And what that does, it actually will allow the customer, the end user, to actually read the data that's in the QR codes. So potentially, if say a person in a company has a problem with their laptop, they could scan the label and then actually send that data to their IT department and it'll say item number, and all the details, and they can actually email and say this item's faulty, and then their IT department can action that. Or if there's a maintenance problem, say there was a faulty drill, you can actually scan that, send that data through as part of your user check process, and that data would actually be then sent through by email. It'd be traceable to your maintenance department, and then obviously they can come out and carry out the repairs. So the QR data viewer app is quite a useful part of that process, but it just gives you an idea of what modern barcoding systems actually give you the ability to do. It's not just like the barcode that you may find on a pack of cornflakes, the 2D, particularly the 2D Seaward QR codes, actually have a lot of test data built into them. And by using the Elite 2 printer and the 2D barcode scanner, you can actually utilize that with your Apollo 500 and 600s, or 500 plus, 600 plus, and actually get that information. So that's really useful from that side of things. Now, data on the move. Last little bit here. Something that's really, really important to a lot of people is actually that connectivity and being able to get the data back to the office when they're out and about. So if you're a remote tester, you're actually testing either on a big site and you're away from the office, or you go out into the field and you actually want to get that data back to the office. It's really important how we do this. So the process we're talking about really is uploading and downloading. Uploading is putting data onto the tester, so that'll be previous records. And downloading is taking the results of the testing that you've carried out off into a report. So you take the data off, you put it into Packard, and basically you create your report for the customer from there. So the uploading and downloading process is where we're putting data onto the tester and taking data off of the tester. So faster reporting, invoicing. So if we can actually get the data back quicker, so rather than me having to wait till the end of the week to drive back into the office, to go into the office, to connect my tester to a PC, to download onto the PC, to send that data through to somebody else, if I can just do that, say, at the end of the day, or when I'm on my lunch break, I can actually connect my Pat tester up to my mobile phone, and I can send that data back to the office using my mobile phone, for example. It's just so much quicker and so much easier. And that means that we can turn the reports around quicker, we can send the reports to the customer quicker, the customer will then pay us quicker, and we get better cash flow. So what connectivity options have we got with the Apollos? Well, USB is the standard option. So generally all of the Apollos, you can connect in a USB cable, connect that to your PC and download your data via a USB cable. That's the sort of standard option. We've also got the option on the Apollos to use this thing called USB on the go. So USB OTG, or USB on the go, is a feature of modern Android phones. So most modern Android phones have actually got effectively Bluetooth on the go built into them, and you can connect to them just like you would do connecting to a PC. So you connect a USB memory stick, or in this case an Apollo, to your phone, it'll pop up and actually say, oh look, here's this data. What do you want to do with this? And you can say, oh, I want to email that back to the office. Or I want to WhatsApp that to my boss, or I want to, and you can actually do that. So it is possible by means of a cable, USB on the go cable. You do need to shop around and make sure you get the right cable that's compatible with your phone, because some cables are more successful than others. USB on the go seems to be a bit of a new technology, and the cables and things like that do seem to be different manufacturers work better than others, so you just need to find a solution that works for you. But if you use a USB on the go cable, connect your phone to the Apollo, then you should be able to actually transfer your data straight back to the phone, and then obviously use your phone's internet connection then to send that back in any format that you want, or copy it to, say, a Dropbox or something like that. Bluetooth, all of the Apollos will connect again to Android devices via Bluetooth. I am talking a bit here about Android devices because compatibility or connectivity with iOS is not brilliant from that side of things because of restrictions Apple put in place. So in most cases, we do work with Android solutions, although I will talk about iOS options in a minute. So Bluetooth, again, we can pair our Apollo testers with a Bluetooth device, whether that's a mobile phone, a tablet, a PC, and we can use Bluetooth file transfer to transfer those files across to the phone or the smart device, and then we can send them back that way round. So you don't even have to plug a cable in. You can use Bluetooth to do that. Wi-Fi. I've added in Wi-Fi here because it might shock a few people, because it's not widely publicised that Wi-Fi is available on the Apollos, and it isn't as built in. But there are a number of devices on the market, these sorts of Wi-Fi file hubs, that you can purchase, where you can connect the Apollo to them, again using a USB cable, and then you can connect to those devices by Wi-Fi, and actually connect your phone. And even in that case, you can connect via iOS. Usually these Wi-Fi hubs have actually got iOS compatibility as well, or there'll be an iOS app for them, and you'll be able to connect via Wi-Fi to your device. So that's something that a number of customers have tried, a number of customers have actually got in the field now using these as solutions. So a Wi-Fi file hub is another option there. Again, you would have to shop around and just make sure you got the right device that suited you and your smart device as well. But again, that is there as an option. Just before I talk about dynamic file names, I was just going to mention about the iOS compatibility. iOS compatibility, there is also another option with the Apollo 600 Plus. And the reason I say with the Apollo 600 Plus, the Apollo 600 Plus has got a memory stick port. And because we've got a memory stick port, you can get memory sticks that are effectively double-ended. So you might have a lightning drive or something that connects with iOS on one end and a normal USB stick on the other. So again, we've got customers that use those with the Apollo 600 pluses to actually transfer data to iOS devices. So that might be something that you want to consider as well, if you are an Apple user. But again, with Apple, there are connectivity options, but they're not as accessible as the options for Android, and that's just due to the stipulations that Apple put on their devices. Dynamic file names is something that I just wanted to mention. In the Apollo Plus, we actually added a feature for dynamic file names. So up until the Apollo Plus firmware came out, we just used to call the download file Apollo Download. You could change it if you wanted to, change the file name, but most people just went Apollo Download, Apollo Download. Now you imagine if you're sending that data back to your office, and every file you send back has the same file name, and that file name is Apollo Download. Now you imagine if you've got 10 engineers and they're all sending that data back and it all says Apollo Download. That's difficult. So what we've done is we've created dynamic file names. So automatically now when you come to do a download, it creates a dynamic file name. And the dynamic file name includes the username, the date, and the equipment serial number within the file name. So straight away, you can send that back, and the person receiving it in the office at the other end knows who did it, when they did it, and which tester was used. So again, they've got that traceability. So when they get those files in, they know which customer to download those records into, which database to use, which files they've got, which files are still outstanding, and it just makes it so much more traceable. So again, a simple thing like dynamic file names really makes a huge difference when you are actually doing this sort of testing. So the conclusion, we've reached the end of the session, and we've also reached the end of the series. So in this session, we looked at documentation and record keeping. We started off by looking at the need for record keeping and what the HSE say about keeping records throughout the life of equipment. We had a good overview through the model forms provided by the IET. We looked at the old ways of testing versus the new or more modern ways of testing. We looked at the pros and cons of record keeping. And we looked in detail at labels, barcode scanning, and data on the move. So hopefully that's given you a good overview, really, of the options that are available to you. And as I say, you can see we've got some great Seaward solutions really built around record keeping, but it does give you an idea of all of the options that are out there. And obviously it's just about finding one that suits you, suits the test equipment, and suits the actual size of your organization, really, from that side of things. So hopefully you've really enjoyed that. As I say, this does bring the webinar series to an end. This is session 8. This is the last in the Pat Refresher series. I hope you've really enjoyed it. I've certainly enjoyed putting all this content together for you, and obviously the whole series will be available on YouTube for you to go and review and recommend to any colleagues and things like that. Obviously, if you did like it, if you go on YouTube, make sure you like, make sure you subscribe, because again, that just shows us really that people are enjoying the content that we're providing and that we're going in the right direction really from that side of things. So what we're going to do now is we're going to turn over to the questions. So if you've got questions, please type those into the chat box, and I'll now hand over to the live version of me, and I'll be able to answer your questions accordingly. So thanks very much for your time. It's been great.